Hello everyone. So today we will see how to write a SOAP API using Spring Boot. The versions I have used are Spring Boot 3, 3.3.1 and for Java I have used Java 17. So there are many differences which I have observed while writing this API. Let's talk about the differences and let's make it run. So the very first thing in the pom.xml, if you see, I'm ready with the pom.xml. So the major changes which I have found in pom.xml is, first of all, um, you will not use Java X. You will need to add some dependencies for Jakarta. You will need to add some dependencies for Saj. You will need to add this dependency of Jakarta Servlet API. So these few dependencies I have to explicitly add. Also, there is a slight change in the schema directory and output directory for Jaxb Maven plugins. So you can take this from the GitHub code. I will provide the GitHub URL in my comment section in the description. I also am ready with the employees XSD. So this is second difference which I have found. Earlier, this employees.xsd file was supposed to be under resource directory, but now this xsd directory is mandatory, or we have to do some changes in the pom.xml to make it work in the resources folder. But by default, you have to create the USD folder. So this employee schema is ready. So I'm going to write my whole code based on this request response of get employee and get employee response. In the request, I have a parameter ID, which is of int type. In the response, I'll have these parameters. So if you see over here, I have an element get employee response for which the type is employee, and then I have defined separately all the parameters for employee type object, ID, first name, last name, and job title and email. So let's build it, and now whatever code we need to write, we will start writing that code. So as soon as this code will be built, this XSD will automatically create a folder structure. If you see over here, I got this folder structure. This came from this namespace. This is my namespace. So it will see, if you see this folder structure in which I have this employee request, get employee response, employee, and object factory. So this is automatically created based on what namespace I have provided. The namespace and this TNS both have to be same, otherwise it will throw error. Now I'm going to write a config file. So let me name the file as soap web service config. Uh, this one I will define it as a configuration, and I will also enable enable WS. This will extends WS configuration configure adapter. So let registration being message dispatcher. So let so these all configurations will be needed for the web service application context which dispatcher servlet dispatcher servlet. So these configurations are needed. Set application context. So this is just a one-time thing. but I want to show the process one, so that's why I'm trying to write this code. And here this is, we have to mention the URL mapping which we need when we hit the request. So any type message dispatcher subject messages. So this method is done. Now we need to define the schema. So public xsd schema of employees schema employee schema, and define here return new simple xsd schema. This is the new class path resource in which we have to pass employees.xsd. So this is defined. Now one more bean we will need here is public this would be like default SDL definition 1. We will pass here our schema, employee schema, which we will define this definition dot set schema. Schema would be employee schema, which we have already defined. We will also set the location, set location URI, in which we will define the URI which we are going to hit in our request. Then we will define port type name, in which I'll mention employee port. We will need set target namespace, and then we will return this definition. In the target namespace, we have to mention the same target which we have defined in our employees XST, this one. The same we will pass in our config file in the target namespace. So our target namespace is, our config file is ready. Now we will write the repository. Repository is needed for employee schema Pojo to read. So I'll name it as employee repository. It will be a component. It will be a component, and it will have, I'll create a map of integer type, integer and employee. s equal to new hash map. Get this. So now I'll set the values. I will initialize it. Public void init. I'll have an employee object. Emp equal to new employee, and I will start adding. Okay, I don't need this. But adding the ID. I'll keep it as 1. First name, John. Last name, set last name. I'll mention as Doe. I need to pass job title. I'll mention as developer, and I need to set the email. So I'll mention as john.doe@email.com. So my repository is ready. I'll mention as public employee find employee. When I pass ID, I should be able to get the employee object. Return employee dot get ID. Yes. I will also put this value in emps dot put, or here with respect to my emp dot get ID, I'll pass emp object. So here it's done. EMPS. Okay, this is, so we are with this. We don't need this. This is by mistake. Yeah, one more thing we have to do, use a post construct here. So our employee repository is ready. Now we will write our endpoint. So endpoint is basically going to be called, it's a very important class. So I'll name it as employee endpoint. This we have to define it as endpoint, and we are going to define a namespace. Namespace should be the same throughout, so I'll mention the same namespace which I've used in my config file and in my XSD file. So that same I'll pass over here. Then I'll write a constructor employee endpoint employee repository this dot employee. Okay, I'll define this variable also. Private final repository. So this is constructor is ready, private, and now I'll write my method. Now this is something which also is very critical in mapping. So get employee response. We need the response. Okay, employee response, and here I'll have request payload. Request payload for type get employment request. So this should be of payload root, in which we have to pass the namespace. My namespace is my namespace URL already defined, and the local part, which should be my get request, get employee request, and I also need response payload here. Now I'll just define the get employee response, get employee response equal to new get employee response get employee response, and response dot employee set employee one. In this I will just mention the repository dot find employee, which is coming from my request. So we are good. Now I will return the response. We are done. This one. So we are done with the endpoint also. Let's compile this. The code is complete. These three files are important. You have to mention the config. This is configurations for your servlet and application context. So this is compiled. The code is compiled. We can change the port also here if we want. So server dot port equal to 8090. Then I'll just compile this one more and we'll run it once. If I run this, yeah, so this is another difference which I found. This is not the difference basically this was earlier existing, but now this employee.xst should also be under resources folder along with the application or property, because at the runtime it will pick this file from here. So now if I'll run it again, it should be fine. Okay, this one is saying okay, it's element. Okay, so I just invalidate and cache the IntelliJ. There might be something left in the caching. Now I will compile it again. Now I will run it. The application is started, and I have changed the port to 8030. The application is started. Now let's hit the request. Let me create request XML here file. I'll name it as employee request dot XML. So I just copy this here. Here you have to make sure your XML and this is your namespace. So this should be exactly same what we have in employee XSD file. So this has to be same to this namespace. And then you can pass your header, body, and employee request. Now let's hit this from the postman. So here I will add a request, and it will be of post type. In the header section, if you go, we have to write content type as text XML, and in the body we have to select raw XML, and then I copy the same XML here. This is a request parameter XML, and we have to write here localhost this. So if you see here, this is my WS. This is a URI which I have mentioned in my config file also. So anything starts with this will hit my URL. The port is 8030 I have mentioned. Let me check here. Application or properties 8030, yes. So let's hit it. So you can see I got the response. So I got all the details of employee ID 1. The same way we can have more details over here in employee section. So this is how we create a SOAP API using Spring Boot 3 plus and Java 17. There are many changes which has been observed. You can try it yourself. I will be checking in this code in my GitHub. I'll provide the URL in the I'll provide the URL in my description. If you face any issue while creating the SOAP API, you can let me know. In my next section, I'll show you how to write the REST API, and then what is the actual difference between SOAP API and REST API, and which one we should consider to use in which scenarios. This is it for this session. I hope this will help you. Thank you so much.